Hello there. It's that time of the week again. We are doing Geek Speak. Today we have a special guest. Of course, my name is Phelan with Seymour Digital Media, where we focus on search engine marketing. And my guest today is
Ashley, WriterGal.
awesome. Yeah, and today we are talking about how you can use AI in your content marketing. Like, what are the best use cases for it? What's the kind of your do's and don'ts in order for you to optimize this as a tool to help you get more work done and get it done properly, and as well get the most out of it, because these tools are super powerful, but they can also lead to some issues where people become over reliant or don't understand where it fits into your workflow, and getting a better understanding on that part.
Yeah, and that's the huge thing is that it can fit into your workflows. It can support you, but it's not meant to replace you. I've been writing for 17 years, various stuff. And it's only in the past few years this has been a thing that people are asking about. I'm getting people that aren't even in my niche asking me, is AI going to replace your job, Ashley?
Yeah.
And it's not if you use it in the right way, which we'll have a chat about today.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the important part, is understanding its context within your business and understanding that it is not going to solve every issue you've ever had, and it's not like a silver bullet that's going to replace a bunch of stuff. Like, it's meant to extend what your team's already doing, because you'll still need to have writers. And I know that we've heard the stories of like Air Canada, where they're on the hook all of a sudden because of a chatbot that they had, and they didn't set the correct prompts, they didn't verify things, and they didn't have a person in the loop, which is going to be super important to, I think, is going to be like the motto of what we're talking about today, is that it's supposed to automate boring things. Think of it like that, rather than replacing my writer. It's just mundane, repetitive tasks that are overly simple. I think that's the key cornerstone that we have when we prep for this today.
And it's all about not letting AI do it all. There's always going to need to be a human element checking it and testing it. Like with that Air Canada example, I can't remember exactly what the bot promised them, but they were now on the hook. And we don't want anyone else to be on the hook for something that AI might have said about their business, especially when you're writing about things like maybe healthcare or safety. If AI writes something for you that's not correct, and remember, you're the expert, you still need to have that eyes on it to make sure that AI is doing it right. There's the right way and the wrong way to do it.
I've heard as well that like newspaper companies as well that are trying to replace full writers wind up spending as much time editing it down, because it makes bombastic claims that it just are not backed up by anything that they have, and so they have to retract, because they're on the hook as publishers, that they don't want to libel anyone or anything like that, and so they understandably will edit those ones out. So I think that, yeah, understanding that it's not just like a perfect solution out of the box, but you need to also have it as part. Yeah, I think of it more of as a tool rather than a person, I think, is the mental model that we're coming to. And so what are some of the uses that you've seen with using it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing when it comes to creating any kind of content, I focus on writing, but this can apply to videos, social media, anything, is using it as a brainstorming tool. Phelan, like you mentioned, we're looking for ways that we can use AI to save time. And when I'm teaching blogging, when I'm teaching writing, sorry, one second. When I'm teaching writing, one of the joys of sharing an office, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. When I'm teaching writing, one of the big roadblocks people have is brainstorming, figuring out what to write, and that takes them forever. But with an AI tool, I can type in one word and get, 10, 20, 30, as many as I want, blog post titles or topics. And it's right there in 2 seconds. And then you can vet the ones that you like and move forward with that. So I definitely find that brainstorming, getting things going is a really great way to use AI. I don't know if you've used AI for that kind of brainstorming as well.
Yeah, I think Pip more so. Sorry, my computer is very upset. I have to close some windows down because it is not happy camper right at the moment. Sorry about that.
I'm seeing a bit of lag here too.
Yeah. No, it's my computer trying to do too many things at once. Yeah, okay. But yeah, what it have? Yeah, Pip and I had used it to do stuff like find me 5 new things about something that I'd never heard about, or something like that, where it's ones where you're trying to find like maybe edge cases of something or ones that are out there that are like not, they're not normal ones that you would find. And so there's definitely some brainstorming is a good use case for it as well. It's
Mhm.
a really good one for first drafts as well, just because I think you talked about writer's block as well, because when you're looking at a blank page, it's tough to get going. Whereas if you use the AI to even just get something as a first draft, you go, I don't agree with this paragraph, but then it gives you something to bounce off of and then rewrite it better, so
Yeah.
that you are not just staring at a blank page, where you can actually look at it and be like, oh yeah, actually I like this, the way this is constructed. I would change
Mhm.
these words, like you have something to work with. Because I find that I'm better when I don't have, blank page is hard to work with. But even if it's a templated thing or something that I could just, I have a much easier time going, I agree with this. I like that. Maybe actually my research showed that this was actually going to be more the case, but at least it's something that you could work off of and
Mhm.
refine rather than just start whole cloth yourself.
Yeah, and I've used it 2 ways. I said, "Ask the AI to give me an outline for a blog article," which is
Mhm.
really great. I can take and choose the outlines that I like, the subheadings, or write the first paragraph of a blog about this. It'll get
Mhm.
my ideas going. I would never use that paragraph. I'd always rewrite it, but it really kicks off that blank page is very scary. Once you have that outline, and that's how even when I do it myself without using AI, I always start with an outline. I say, okay, I've got 500 words, 1,000 words. Here are my headings. I have approximately this many words for each heading, and it helps me organize my thoughts. And that's basically what AI is doing for me. And I pick and choose what makes sense for starting a blog post, starting social media. I don't know, Phelan, have you guys ever used it for getting like ad copy or SEO keywords?
Yeah, actually, funny you mention that one. That was the most recent one that Pip's done. Is a really good use case for it. Is to basically Pip grabbed our Search Console data. So that's the stuff that we're showing up for in Google. She fed it the CSV, because on the ChatGPT 4 you can feed it data, and then ask the question, find me the top keyword I would have for this page, and this is the title of the
Mhm.
page. And what it did, this is a really good use case for ChatGPT, because there's a distinction with AIs. One is that there's one mode that's called generative. So make me a picture that's of a dog eating a birthday cake, and it's going to generate you that image. But it has to know what a dog is, or it has to know what a cake is, and know what eating is. And so it
Mhm.
has to approximate that. Whereas if you say something like there's selective or regressive, which is what most of these large language models, right? It takes a ton of information and it regresses it down to whenever you have this word follows it. That's what it does. But if you give it data and you say, find me the keyword that's like I'm ranking for the best, that's one of its things that it will do really well with. And so you could use that information, because computers are just good at algorithmically grinding down something and being like, actually, we found this trend in the data. So
Mhm.
that's its strong suit. That's what it's really good for. So we've definitely used it for something like that. Ad copy, I found it to be, again, a good jumping off point, but I find
Mhm.
it to be not as good as it thinks it is what I would
Yeah.
say. It gets a little repetitive. It uses certain verbs and certain adjectives like all the time, or that,
Mm.
at least that's been my experience, is that you can feel that there's like a couple words. We used it for our own, and it wanted to give us like a nautical theme. I didn't really get, yeah, the ad copy was all like taking sail and like on your journey. And it just decided that we were going to be a nautically themed company, and I didn't quite get why.
That
So
goes to show you don't just take what AI gives you blindly and put it on your website. Because if you did, which a lot of business owners do, they just take what AI gives them, what the generative stuff gives them, and puts it on the site. And then they find out later, oh, Seymour Digital isn't a nautical based company at all. Yeah, you got a fish and you live by the ocean.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
about
yeah,
it. No nautical theme to it.
yeah, yeah. It was, yeah. Well, it was like all the like calls to action were all very nautical. It was just it was very. I didn't get where it came from with that one, but yeah, it was
Oh.
definitely an interesting one. I think also one other thing that kind of came up when we were talking about this in the prep is that keeping the AI also constrained, like giving it a lot of constraints and like very small segmented parts, it's easier for it to do of only generate me 200 headlines that are exactly 30 characters long. If you can get, it does a better job with that. Though I found also it likes to ignore character limits if I give it to it. I have to like
Oh,
be very
really?
specific. It's just like, make it 30 characters long, and then it's 60, and I'm like, no, 30 characters, and then it was 45, and I was like, okay, like seriously.
Oh, AI is already rebelling against us, right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, dear.
Up, which is also a funny thing that's come up as well, is that on the forums, I don't know if you've experienced it. We've done a couple of them that the AI, like ChatGPT, just doesn't want to do the work because
Yeah.
it's been trained to be like a person. People don't always want, they find excuses. And so apparently, like, there's a lot of complaints on the forums of, yeah, I asked it to generate me 30 images, it generated two, and then told me to finish the rest. There's, it's entertaining what's like the, how would I put it? Like, the weirdness that comes out of AI because of you don't always know how the model's going to speak, give it back to you. And so sometimes it acts so much like a person that just, yeah, I don't want to work. You do the work.
It's trying to keep us honest. Maybe it's a good thing because we shouldn't be relying on AI to do this. It's reminding us that, hey, we're real people here. We should be doing some of this work too. So I guess when you think about it, it's actually a good thing that it's not doing all the work for us.
I think that, yeah, I think that a lot of, especially if you read like in the big newspapers and all that stuff, the way they talk about it is it's going to be a great apocalypse. And I'm not of the opinion that it's going to be like coming for all our jobs and like it,
No,
because
no.
yeah, there's just things like hard limitations on the amount of computing power that would be required to have all of us compute these things. It just would be like the numbers that they would require. OpenAI is trying to get $10 trillion to build out whole infrastructure networks, to build out new data centers and all this stuff. And it's just the amount of what they require when they calculate it out is just going to be so crazy that it would not.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm starting
And
to see a lot of articles and stuff online show up about the environmental impacts of using AI. We just
mhm,
use it thinking, oh, we can just use it. It's online, it's on the computer. We don't think about all the servers that you mentioned that they have, all the power that takes, all of that computing power is going to be damaging if we rely on it too much, if we use it too much for things that we don't really need to.
yeah, exactly. And as well, that I won't go into like rare earth metal stuff, but like those are difficult to get out of the ground. That's why they're called
Mhm.
rare earth metals. And they're difficult to get from places, process them, all the stuff just to make a GPU to run these data centers. I know it's going to be a huge one that is going to have a lot of long-term effects. And especially for the expansion that they want to do with
Mhm.
AI it's going to be a lot of work. But I think that, yeah, just being more thoughtful about how to use it in your mix of your business, I think is going to be a good one as well.
Yeah.
I don't know about it like growing past this point. Like that's the part where I'm a little like, I see it as a little bit plateauing a little bit
Mhm.
because to scale up more, it's going to be crazy. We've got a question here as well. How do we feel about training an LLM, which is a large language model, which is what ChatGPT and all these are basically? It's like a
Mhm.
really large model of language and it knows things about it. So it's a great question. Um, I don't know about like specific ones like the Odin AI or Umbrel.
Mm.
I don't know about them specifically, but I think in general, I think that they have some really good things going for them because if you have a closed network, it's one of those like they say it in computer science is like garbage in, garbage out. So if you give it bad data, you're going to get bad data out of it. So with these ones, I think that you can control what's going in and have it trained more to like your own separate data set. I think that it'd be interesting, and I think it could be good for businesses. I know that
Mhm.
there's ones of like banks and insurance companies that have been using a lot of this as well for just doing, they're having to do tons of computation. So if you can get an algorithm or a large language model to compute through a lot of this stuff, that's going to save you a lot of time. And so they only train it on their own, like privately held information versus the internet, that's one of the big ones, right? Is like the more people are using this stuff, the more it's out there, the more that the ChatGPT gets trained on. It's like a recursive loop of
Yeah.
getting fed on its own, giving it what they call like digital dementia, where you're just getting fed your own part and it's not working as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I've had a client that came to me recently with that, and she had her own model. I can't remember what site she was using. She put in all of her like PDFs and all of her program information, and the stuff that or it wasn't Chat GP, whatever the program was, whatever it was generating for her and content wise was factual, which was great, but it wasn't her. Like it
mm,
included a little bit of her the way she talks and from the language, but it still wasn't, it didn't include like the personal stories, the human element of language, but factually it was more correct than if I put the same prompt into Chat GPT or something more generic. In that respect, it's good, but still, I didn't take any of the content that gave me. I just rewrote
Mhm.
it all in my own words, but it was an interesting thing to see how that works.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's where the interesting part. I've heard of some people even training it to sound like what,
Mhm.
what themselves. Of here, read like 100 blog posts that I've written, and because
Yeah.
it's in their own voice, that it is super useful for them to be able to do that. And so they're saying that want to geek out more offline with Pip as well. I think they have a bunch of awesome comments. Thank you, Laura, for all these. And yeah, I think that
Mhm.
this is a good way to do it. And I think that because that's a big one that's coming up as well is issues of copyright. A lot of what helps for businesses is, I want to say, like getting around copyright, but you could be like, who knows where it got all this information from? And so that's a big one that
Mhm.
is, it's a big looming thing about AIs is that like how attribution, who wrote this, like
Yeah.
and I know that there's been one court case that said if it's generated by AI, it technically doesn't have a copyright if it's like purely generative. But then there's like the how did it get trained? Who gave it that information? Which is, I think that's a big one that it's not for me to decide. Like I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I don't run OpenAI, but that's definitely one that is going to have to get figured out. And I think that's a big one that
Yeah.
is, I don't know where that's going to shake out, but I think that's going to also really define the boundaries of it. Not only like we talked about physically, like how much it
Mhm.
can compute, but also who's legally responsible for what it says and all
Definitely.
that part. And I think
Yeah.
that's one that's going to be, I don't envy the lawyers that have to figure that part out because that it's a big headache that I don't want any part of.
No, and what if somebody goes out there and they probably have used AI to write a whole book and published it? What impacts does that have? That's why if you like we talked about before about using shorter bits of
Hmm.
text. If you ask AI to generate one sentence, chances are sentence structures can only go so far, so many different variations. There might not be, and again, I'm not a lawyer. There may
Yeah.
not be any copyright issues with one sentence that sounds like something else that's out there, as opposed
Yeah.
to larger pieces of text. So again, it goes back to short text and rewriting still, adding your personal touches, personal perspectives to anything that AI generates for you.
Yeah, I think that I totally agree with that. That it's having it small and condensed and using it for the brainstorming or like a short
Mhm.
intro paragraph that you just to
Yeah.
kick things off. I I think that is a good use and a good prompt, and it saves you from any issues later on because then you know that you wrote it. You're not like I didn't even know. You don't want to be responsible for something, or even if it made an
Yeah.
not an allegation, but maybe made it an unsubstantiated like assertion, and then you're on the clock for being cited for that. And so it's definitely one where I think that will really help a lot of businesses just to not
Mhm.
accidentally say something they didn't mean to or double check.
Even a
Yeah.
way around that would be use AI for research as opposed to content generation. I do that for clients that I don't know anything about their niche and I need some top resources or links or just definitions of certain things. Use
Mhm.
AI for that instead of generating the content that you're going to use in the end result.
Yeah. This was an interesting point as well that I think, yeah, I think that it's a good idea to, yeah, treat it, yeah, how to view the copyright. I think that, yeah, that's a good way to do this. I think that, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of conversations between people about
Hmm.
figuring this part out. I was going to say, I had a thought, it evaporated from me at the last second. But yeah, I think that it is. Oh, I was going to say what you're saying also works with, like, I'd heard the content manager for MailerLite, the email marketing platform, but the way they were using it is basically they have the research and they know their voice. And then what they do is they just get basically the AI, kind of what we're talking about, to do a first draft of, hey, write me an article about why cosmetic companies are getting a 5% increase in their open rates because of this type of email. And so they have the data, they know that they're putting that in, and then it does the boring part of actually writing like a structure, and then they go through and add their voice on top of it. And so
Hmm.
it's a good workflow of, it's not, it's like, to me, that's a really good use case where you've got your facts right, you've got voice, and then the boring part of like actually writing out like a boring article that like you've got to hit these points, and it's just
That's
like,
the fun part. That's the part I like, the writing part.
yeah, but yeah,
I'm over
that's
here
fair.
read though.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
good. Like I think that, and if that's what you're looking for, like obviously you're
Yeah.
using it for your own way. That I think it's like looking at it as part of your workflow and
Yeah.
how you work with it. I think that's going to be the most important part. I think that the other part that's going to be interesting as well is that Google didn't officially say, but they've basically said that like it's good. There's so much AI content now that they can't really distinguish the two. It's just so much, and because it's like a regressive, like an algorithm, they would use a regressive algorithm as well to be like, okay, in our large language model, we found that these words all came together, but it's becoming so much that they just can't even detect it. So that's going to be, as humans, I feel like when you're reading something, you can definitely feel when they,
Tell.
yeah, you could. It's just one of those weird things that humans do well, of that uncanny valley where it's just it's close, but it's not quite like why would a person say it this way, kind of thing.
Yeah. And people are smart. People know, they may not know what's wrong with the copy, but they'll
Yeah,
read it, whether it's your website, your blog, your social media, and they'll just get that feeling that this isn't right. This isn't on brand. This doesn't sound like the person behind the business. And that really stands out. And I think maybe one way to get around, not get around that, it's not the right word. One way to make it sound less AI is that if you do use portions of AI, is to work in those stories that AI doesn't
mm,
know about. If you were to write something about today's thing, about today's live,
yeah,
we would be throwing in our own ideas and stuff like that, our own stories. Like we've thrown in stories that we've heard in the news. Thrown in stories from my business, and that will make it sound less robotic. AI still sounds, even if you ask it to be light and cheery, it still sounds robotic a lot of the time. And people know, people
yeah,
will see that.
yeah, or like a twee is another emotion that I notice a lot with it, where it gives me like a oh boy like
Yeah.
responses, and it feels inauthentic, but that's
Yeah.
because the machine wouldn't know that is would come across as inauthentic. They're just trying to be positive and happy, and then but they don't get that it sounds like overly sincere, and
Yeah.
so it comes across as insincere to people because most people are just using yeah, or just have more world experience than the AI does, and it doesn't know how interactions on an emotional level work. And so
Yeah.
that's a limitation that it has. And that's just the brass tacks of it. And I think that, yeah, I think ultimately, like, I would say, yeah, it's not, I don't think it's coming for your jobs. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. Even looking at the example of the Amazon grocery store, remember the one that you could walk in and walk out,
Yeah.
and they're just saying that it was all AI, and then it turns out like no, it was thousands of people in India watching the cameras, and then I'm manually like charging people, and it was
Oh no.
yeah. So like the AI vision of where like businesses think it's going to be and what it's going to do, it just doesn't line up with kind of the limitations. I think that it yeah, I think that ultimately it's just one that we're just going to be able to use. It's just like a easy automation tool. I think personally that's
Mhm.
where I see it really its future is not like taking over, but basically just fitting into the slot of all of our tech tools and how we use them. I think is a easier way to use it.
Yeah. It's like I said in the beginning, it supports content creation, it supports our businesses, but it's never going to replace us. We're always needed. And yeah, from people like me, I'm getting those questions all the time. So I have to have those responses on why they should hire me and not trust the AI. So it's adding a little bit more work to my plate now. But AI has been around for content generation for a couple years now, the past year really. And people know, people understand that. And if your budget is a little bit shorter, you're a new business, maybe you might rely on it a little bit more starting out. But as you grow, as you build into your own voice and your own perspectives and experience, you can start to pull away from relying on AI and using more copywriters, using your own voice and content.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it is making your own resources go farther. If you got
Yeah.
tight budgets, if you've
Yeah.
got, you can look at this as a way to spread it out a little longer, make things work a little better because, yeah, you're going to have a lot of, you may have constraints or something. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think that looking at it more pragmatically as like a glue that fits into
Yeah.
gluing more spots together than it is a replacement for whole departments. I think
Yeah,
that,
it's just optimizing
yeah,
business practices. What we're all learned when we learn
yeah,
about business, look for ways that you can optimize. I think this is one way we can. just again, with the warning, don't rely on it as, don't fire all your employees and replace them with the AI. It won't last long.
Yeah, yeah, and it won't be as good as we
Yeah.
expect. And so, yeah, there's a lot of comments here from Laura as well. I'll just add this one.
It gets comical. Yeah, it totally
Yeah,
does.
yeah, it definitely, yeah, it has some issues that come out to the fore.
Mhm.
And I think we got a good spot with it. I think that we looked at where I think both of us are going to be using it. I think that it's just going to be fit more as like a tool in our
Yeah.
arsenal than, yeah, I think that's where I see it's coming up compared to like where the hype like of what people think that it's going to be. I just don't see it there.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. Let's use it to support us, to help us all grow and
Yeah,
scale our businesses, but not replace us. It never will. I don't think it will.
yeah, I agree. All right. So I guess we will close it out there. It's been a great talk, Ashley. And again, my name is Phelan with Seymour Digital Media.
And I'm Ashley at WriterGal Marketing.
Awesome. Bye for now.